Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about Trump Middle East wins versus what the media says. Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn joins me. And why FeminExit? Poor, women, and minorities doing better under President Trump. And of course, I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth. America Can We Talk is sponsored by GC Works, a Dallas-based company performing advanced technology research in the oil and gas industry.
And welcome again to America Can We Talk and to today's First Five. I'm Debbie Georgatos. My First Five today, I just want to focus on the great things that are happening in Washington with respect to foreign policy, President Trump's accomplishments, and then just spend a moment talking about what the media is focusing on. Just a little contrast there. If you think about next time you read a bad story about President Trump, ask yourself, wonder where the coverage is of the good things. So first I'll tell you, as you all likely have been following, that the President Trump hosted at the White House just a wonderful ceremony, the signing of historic Middle East deals, and they're historic, of course, because the Middle East has just been an unfortunate trouble spot, great tension, not just over decades or centuries, but really millennia. But President Trump signed, there were several deals signed. One was historic peace deal between Israel and the UAE, United Arab Emirates. This is worked on by President Trump, bringing the country of Israel, normally hated by all Islamic majority countries, to the table. Israel, UAE signed one deal, and that was marking the normalization of relations between UAE and then the next one was with Bahrain, UAE, Bahrain and Israel, a peace deal, working them, creating normal relations between them. Both of these are President Trump making strides, making progress in areas where previous presidents have tried and often failed. Also, there was, they've been using the term the Abraham Accords, but in addition to Israel and the UAE and Israel and Bahrain, there was also a trilateral document signed, Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE all signing on, called the Abraham Accords, basically just saying they're going to try to work together. One big concession made by Israel was that, of course, all Muslims have the right to visit Islamic holy sites within the country of Israel. These are huge accomplishments. These are huge things for President Trump to have brought about. Also, there was, and there is also additional talk of other Middle Eastern countries that have had very troubled relations with Israel coming on board soon, possibly Oman, Sudan, and Morocco. Great strides toward the great goal of world peace. In addition, the president has been intimately involved and brought about an economic deal between Serbia and Kosovo. These are all fabulous things for the world. No one could be unhappy except people who want perpetual warfare. There was we talked in the show a couple weeks ago, I think it was, with James Carafano, who was making the point that one thing the Trump administration did differently this time was, in the past, many U.S. presidents have assumed they had to have the deal between Israel and the Palestinians all set in place, all solved, before Israel could then work outside of that and then go and work with other countries coming to a deal. So past presidents and State Department advisors have basically allowed the Palestinian-Israeli conflict to be a bar to Israel moving forward and making peace deals with and normalizing relationships between Israel and other countries. This was one thing that the Trump administration said, we just don't have to wait for the Palestinians to come around. In fact, the Palestinians are now weakened by the fact that other majority Muslim countries are coming on board, making deals, normalizing relationships with Israel. This makes it harder and harder for the Palestinians to keep up their endless conflict with Israel. But the decision to say, we're moving forward, even though the Israelis and Palestinians have no deal, was a great step. And these are things, when you step back and think, what should the President of the United States be working on? It really shouldn't be endless fusses with people in Congress who make up false accusations against him and try to take him down for 3.5 years of his first term of presidency. he, the president, has managed, despite the endless attacks by the Democrat majority in the Congress, by the media, to attack his presidency, to delegitimize him. These are enormous accomplishments by President Trump, leading to, of course, you likely all read that he was nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. Obviously, many people are nominated, doesn't mean he gets it, but the idea he was nominated, I want to just mention what they were. The first one was on Wednesday. The president was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize by a member of the Norwegian parliament for helping to broker the peace deal between Israel and the UAE. Again, these are internationally prominent people who are looking at what the president has done and said, wow, this is a great thing. Look what this president has done. Actually nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize for having done something very, very significant in American history. And then there was a second nomination. Magnus Jacobson, who is a member of the Swedish parliament, announced he was nominating the Trump administration and the 2 European nations for their joint work. This was Serbia and Kosovo, joint work for peace and economic development through the cooperation agreement signed in the White House. So 2 different entities, not the American media mob always attacking President Trump, but actually prominent people connected to the Nobel Peace Prize nominating President Trump for that award. Whether he gets it or not, we'll just have to find out in 2021. We don't know whether he'll be given that award. But I really want to close out the first 5 today by saying this. We spent so much time in this first Trump administration listening to endless false attacks by the American left, by the media who's complicit in fomenting just endless dissension and disdain for the president in this country. Constant attacks on him, ranging from the cooked up Russia collusion hoax to the impeachment effort to remove him for nothing, or for removing him for what Biden actually did and Trump didn't do but got falsely accused of doing. Just the constant effort to bring this president down. And you see a president emerging strong from this era, nearing the close of his first term of presidency, enormous accomplishments. And I'll close out the first 5 by saying this. This is exactly the kind of things, these are the kinds of things that a leader does in this world, brings formerly incompatible warring nations, warring countries to the table and works out a deal. Just huge kudos to President Trump for both things he has done in this context and for the Nobel Peace Prize nominations. And that, my very fine friends, is today's first 5. Okay, we have a guest joining us, as I mentioned before we started. We have Senator Marsha Blackburn, and I just want to tell you the briefest history of her. Everyone knows who she is, and she's also the author of this new book we're going to talk about, which I'm going to show you before she comes on. Here's her new book. It's a fabulous cover, by the way, great cover. But the book is called The Mind of a Conservative Woman, Seeking the Best for Family and Country. You can get it on Amazon. I did. It is a great read, really wonderful book. And very quickly, Senator Blackburn is the first woman senator to be elected to the United States Senate from the great state of Tennessee. She is I think it started in she was elected in 2019. Previous to that, she served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 2003 to 2019. Before that, a state senator in the great state of Tennessee, a leader among conservative women. And I believe we have her online, Senator Marsha Blackburn.
Hi there. How are you doing?
I am well, and I'm glad to hear your voice. Good to see you. I'm just happy you're here. Well, you know, this book you've written is tremendous.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we are thrilled to have the book out and in the marketplace. And I tell you, it is doing great because it's a very intentional book. And it focuses on the prejudice and the bias that conservatives get from the mainstream press and from the political left.
Well, that is for sure. You know, one thing I wish we had like 3 hours. I'm pretty sure your office said you do not have 3 hours. So I'm gonna. They said something like you're busy. I don't know, but I do want to try to get to some key things. Plus, I want to ask you your opinion about some current events. But to start with, on your book, one thing I loved is that you really went deep into the thinking behind, kind of the idea of America, the idea what got us around to what America is. You talked about just the historically and anciently what formed the ideas of conservatism. And I know you can't do a lengthy thing, but if you would just share some of those, and you went back to biblical terms, you went back, just describe some of that if you would, please.
Yes, what I did was go back to our nation's founding and look even further back into history as to how we arrived at these principles that we term our first principles, our constitutional principles. And we go back to Jerusalem, the Judeo-Christian ethic, the 12 tribes of Israel, from which we draw our principles of federalism. We look at what we learned from the Greeks with political awareness and philosophy, and Romans with the law and social awareness, and then Parliament from London, our founding documents from Philadelphia. And then we look at the French Revolution and the writings of de Tocqueville and Burke, and also Russell Kirk and William F. Buckley, and then come to modern day conservatism.
I love that you did that. That was a great summary. I'm impressed how quickly you go through that, but it's so important because I think a lot of times if people aren't aware of the kind of history you describe, it's kind of the history of ideas, the history of ideology. Where did all these ideas come from? And you kind of wake up one day and think about America as a blank slate. You can get sidetracked into thinking kind of anything goes. Any kind of economic policy might be okay. Any kind of government regulation might be okay, because you don't have this grounding that you provide. It's a brilliant way to inform people. I love that about your book. Thank you so much for doing that.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that we note, conservatives and many times independents who lean center-right, they will talk about principles. And what do you hear from the left? The left will talk about government control and trendy ideas and mandates that are going to be given by government. So we come at this from different sides, and you're exactly right. It is imperative that women who are serving in elective office be able to define why they are a conservative. It is imperative that those who speak up and express their opinions in the public square are able to say, this is what I believe and why. And whether you're talking to a friend, a family member, or a coworker, or one of your children, you want to be able to say, this is why we believe what we believe. This is why I hold the positions that I hold, and talk about it. And realize, where did this Judeo-Christian ethic come from? Where did these principles of federalism come from? Where did respect for the rule of law and justice come from? Where is it that we say we should have the right to that political expression? And know where it came from, so that I tell you, I really believe that if you don't know your history, then you don't know what you're made of. And you don't have that concrete feeling in your beliefs.
I could not agree more. And I think among the problematic things in America is that our education system has changed over the last 1 or 2, maybe even 3 decades, where students learn less and less about these founding ideas. And I'm talking about from junior high school, college. We learn less and less about these ideas. And so kids emerge from college, even college-educated young people, not having any rooting in this. And so when they hear ideas like rule of law, they think, well, that's just one way to think, but there's something else equally valid. I mean, isn't our education system in need of reinforcements to help young people figure out all of this that you wrote out?
Well, we are, and our education system is. But the point to this is, if they're not going to teach it, I know so many women who say, you know, for me, it was, and they've read the book, or I will tell you, one of the things is a lot of men have read the book, and they love the part on the history and on our heritage and what conservatives believe in, even though this book is written primarily for women because of the bias that they face by the media and by the left, who thinks that women should be a monolithic group. I have heard from so many men who have said, this is great information. It helps me understand what my wife or my daughter or my sister is up against on a daily basis.
Yes, I could not agree more. And it's actually interesting in this time in 2020, watching the political scene in America, you have messaging from Candace Owens, who's leading the Blexit, and Brandon Tatum leading the Blexit movement, trying to make this point about you shouldn't be told because of your skin color how you think. You shouldn't be treated as a monolithic unit as you are by the Democrat Party. And it's so true with respect to women, too. There has been messaging from the left, because you're a woman, you believe this, you like this, you don't like this. And it's such a breath of fresh air to have an inspired message that you're giving that, no, women actually, we can think for ourselves. And we need to think for ourselves. We need to be reasserting that we aren't going to be told, we're not going to be politically assigned how to think. I love that you're making that point.
Well, we think that it is an important point to make. And I will tell you, some of the most fun I had in writing this book, and I was writing it in 2019, and I said only God knew how timely it was going to be for the 2020 elections. But one of the things I enjoyed most was writing the chapter about the Stepford wives of liberalism and focusing on how they come up with these talking points, and every member of Congress, every talking head on TV, every pundit, they use the exact same word, the exact same phrasing, and even the same inflection in that phrasing. And they expect women to be a part of this monolithic group. And they basically say to women who are pro-life, pro-family, pro-business, pro-military, that, look, your opinion doesn't count. And women are tired of that. And so many times, this is also a great book for women who are independent. And I would be speaking many times to business groups, and somebody would stand up during Q&A and they would say, Marsha, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm an independent. And most women are an independent. And so they would say, I look at the issues. I look at the candidates. Then I make up my mind. And so finally I started to say, tell me what your filter is when you look at issues and candidates. Tell me what's important. What's your filter? And coming back to me would be things like, I want somebody that respects the Constitution, that agrees with the rule of law and abiding by the rule of law and plays by the rules. And I want equality. I want justice for everybody. I want fairness in the system. I want government out of my way. I don't want them to make my health care decisions and my child's educational decisions. I want to make certain there is opportunity for all of our children. And I realized finally that what they were giving me was a conservative construct. It is just that women who are independent need a landing place. So this book is a great landing place. So your listeners and viewers should pick one up, read it, and then pass it to a neighbor and have them read it.
Absolutely true, and I love that point about how what you ask people what they stand for, and they run through a litany of things, and they want to kind of say, this is how I see things, what I believe in, and they're not necessarily, they aren't aware that it's pretty much what the conservatives say, but they want to feel like they got there on their own. And actually, everyone likes that feeling, like I didn't just get told what to think, I learned how I think. But what they are saying to you are things that really the Republican Party stands for. That is, they've got a choice to make that does validate the views that they have.
Yes,
yep.
That is right. And it is our job to help them understand who they are and what their political leaning is. And in the book, I give guidelines for how to have those difficult conversations with friends and family, how to talk about issues like immigration and taxes and abortion and the military and some of the issues that come up literally every day. And we think that it is exciting. This is an exciting time for conservative women to step up. And instead of just staying silent when somebody says, oh, this is exactly how this ought to be, that you say, well, that is one point, but what if this is how it ought to be? Because we've lost that ability to have that point to counterpoint. And our nation and freedom's cause has been so well served by having respectful, robust political debate.
You are, Senator Blackburn, I probably haven't ever listened to my show before, but you're singing my song. I just talk about this is the greatest thing about America. We should be celebrating. We're founded in these ideas of robust political debate and listening to each other, exchange of ideas without name calling, but just substance. And yes, your book is brilliant in helping people do that. I know you're about out of time on your schedule, but I do want to ask you, you had this reference to one of my favorite women in history, Margaret Thatcher. I just love that you talked about her. It's kind of like I've thought before, I wish we could just clone her and bring her into our generation. But I see you as actually very similar to her as being a trailblazer, as being a person who's not just going along with the crowd, but saying what you think. So have you found it hard to be in the Senate and be a Margaret Thatcher type leader person, or do you find that you're bringing people behind you? How does it feel to be a person like that in the Senate today?
Listen, I am always opening doors for others and pushing through glass ceilings and moving barriers. And when people say things that are unkind or mean, and in the book you probably chuckled as you read some of the things I've been called by the left. But the thing that I do is I say, shake it off. Just move on. Keep your eye on the goal. And that is what we're going to do.
Absolutely. I want to commend you also for it was so exciting that President Trump invited you to speak at the Republican National Committee. Commend you. Just a beautiful, first of all, just a beautiful set of remarks and beautiful presentation. Great job. And I do think, I want to, wrap up with this. So I know that I'm so glad he had you there speaking at the RNC. I think that one job women have, because there's often talk about, somehow women aren't going to support President Trump. I think Trump's agenda has done wonderful things for America and for women. And I think that's part of selling him and the importance of women supporting him. It's incumbent on all of us to try to do that. So I'd love to hear. I'm sure you talk to women about support for President Trump. What's your sense about how is he moving forward, making progress with the women's vote?
Yes, he is. And here is the thing. The number one issue with women is safety and security. The number two issue is the economy. The number three issue is school choice. And President Trump outpolls Joe Biden on all three of those issues.
And there you have it. I saw you've given interviews recently relating to China and this Chinese virologist, what she's been saying. And so I'd love another time maybe we'll have you on to talk about that. But for today, I want to be sure and share with our listeners. Again, I'm showing them your book. It is The Mind of a Conservative Woman, Seeking the Best for Family and Country by Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, thank you. And the book is available at all major retailers, either in store or online. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks for that great book. Thank you and the great interview. It is really truly a great book. I'm going to turn back to something we talked about yesterday that I didn't quite get on to before I get to FeminExit, I didn't quite get on to this point I wanted to make, which is, we had Katie Hopkins, we played her little video from Beverly Hills, and she was, all excited about, the spirit of liberty, and just people are happy to be out, and they want to be in the world. They want to be talking to people. They want to be social. She said we miss the noise, and I've mentioned a couple times we've just missed the kind of normal life in America that seems very repressed. And one thing I meant to mention yesterday, and I forgot to do, but I want to do it in kind of in conjunction with, connected to that spirit that you saw in Beverly Hills, of all places. You saw people, and this has been going on for days and days. It wasn't a one-day thing. It's people, as you saw in the video from yesterday, Katie Hopkins, people of all backgrounds, race, ethnicity, national origin. They just want to be out in public. They want to be social. They want to be free. They want to be happy. Joy was just effusive in this Beverly Hills thing. And that is spreading around this country, I think. There is a spirit of, we want to stand up now, have our freedom now in America. And we're not going to wait anymore. We're not going to wait until we find out when the government officials tell us that maybe we're allowed to have our, next phase of opening our society, or whether we're allowed to go to restaurants or stand, 3 feet away from people instead of 6 feet away. People want normal life back now. So something happened in the football world I want to just mention. I don't know why. I meant to mention this yesterday. I wanted to get it out today. There was a great thing that some football players from USC did. And that, we have family who went to USC. So we're, and it's it's a great football school, or it was. Anyway, the USC actually had a wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he is a player on the USC team. And he put out in a tweet a letter to the governor of California, signed on by the USC football team, saying, "Let us play." When you ask about the kind of things people ask me all the time when I give speeches, what can I do? How can I help? I'm so frustrated. This is a stroke of brilliance. This is taking something people want, which is football to return. They want normal life to return. And this kid is a player at USC. He puts out a letter to the governor of California, a tweet basically saying, come on, get behind us. Let us play football. So you have USC and the Pac-12, and they, I think they were told they weren't going to have any season at all. But he's saying, come on, Governor, you got to lift this. You got to have this. The Big Ten announced they're going to return to play in the 2020 season on October 24th. These are just signs. There's signs around this country that people want their freedom back. They want life back. They want normalcy back. They're tired and they're done with these it's not just the shutdown of our economy, but it's the whole this sense of America shut down, blanketed, masked, sheltered in place, forced to stay home, becoming submissive and subservient. People are done and tired of it. They want to have America back. And I just wanted to give credit to this one kid on the USC team just said, you know what? We're going to fight back. These kind of things where you live in your school districts, in your areas. I have friends around here in Dallas doing things like this, putting word out saying, we don't want to have to wear a mask everywhere we go. We want to be able to go to the grocery store and not stop at the door unless our mask is fully covering our nose and mouth. We want to have normal life. These kind of things have big impact. They make news and they cause other people to recognize, wow, there are other people out there in America who want freedom too. This is a calling of freedom to stand up and speak up in this time. Love this kid did that at USC. Okay, last topic for today, and ties in actually with our interview with Senator Marsha Blackburn, and has to do with the, I use the expression FeminExit. And obviously it's a play on Blexit, which is a Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum movement that's basically saying Black and Latina exit from the Democrat Party. What have the Democrats actually ever done to make your life better? The same argument applies to women. What exactly is it that the leftists in this country have done to make your life better? What is the reason you continue to vote for people whose policies don't help you? It's a very, very fair question to African Americans in this country, very fair question to feminists in this country. Women who are feminists who say, oh, yeah, women, feminists, we vote for the Democrat Party. They got our back. They're with us. Based on what? Based on what? I want to tell you some numbers, because FeminExit, if you're a woman, and supposedly women really, really care about the poor, minorities, and women, and fairness, and all this, if you are a feminist and you say, well, I vote with the Democrat Party because I really believe in equality. I vote to support because I have concerns about the poor and African Americans and minorities and women. And so this is why I vote for the Democrat Party. It's a very valid question. What is it the Democrats do to actually help? What the Democrats do is talk. They promise. They tell you that they really, really care. They tell you they're the ones. Democrats say, oh, no, we're the ones. And that, I feel your pain, the Bill Clinton line. We understand you. We believe you. We care about you. The messaging of the left, beside endlessly creating little silos of victims to turn against each other, but the messaging of the left is always, we have sympathy. We care. But if their policies don't work, what difference does it make, even if they really do care? Even if you really do think that Democrats in this country, for some bizarre reason, you actually think Democrats in this country care more about women and minorities and poor people, if their policies don't help, who cares whether they care? So, tying in to tell you some data that's out now about the Trump economy. And you have to sit back and remember, this is the Trump economy doing beautifully the first 3 years, even under the constant attack of the Democrat media mob, the left in this country, attacking President Trump, going after him, the Russia-Trump collusion, and then we had the whole impeachment, just idiocy, and endless attacks. And President Trump brought back jobs to America. He brought prosperity back to America. He brought companies home from abroad, created jobs in heartland America. He had the best economic numbers ever prior to COVID coming along, and even then have to deal with the challenge of COVID. But what President Trump did was put conservative policies in place and showed the world, yet again, as been shown many other times, that if you just put the right ideas in place and hold on to them and hang on to them and rely on them, you're going to make life better for everyone. So here are new numbers out. This is the middle class boom that benefited from Trump policies. So let me tell you just a few of these numbers. And again, you can read these on my website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage under shows, drop down list of links. Do you know that households in America have seen the biggest jump in real median income in this country in at least 52 years? That the poverty rate is lower than it has been since at least 1959. This is the annual census report now out on income and poverty. The government's numbers, the annual census report on poverty and income. Households have seen the biggest jump in real median income in 52 years. Poverty rate lower than it's been since at least 1959. Median household income reaches an all-time high. In 2019, median household income shot up 6.8%, the biggest annual increase since at least 1967. Lower income families gained the most. So contrary to what the left is always arguing, that Republican policies are all about benefiting the rich and cutting taxes for the rich, the true story is conservative fiscal policies help poor people. This is something the Democrats do not want you to understand. Conservative fiscal policies help poor people. So the lower income families in this country gained the most. Despite all the chants about, President Trump only cares about the rich, lower income families made the biggest gains in median income in the first 3 years of Trump's presidency. Lower income families made the biggest gains. The bottom fifth of households saw their incomes climb 10% under Trump. The top 5% of households saw their share of total income drop. These are things, if these were numbers that came out of a Democrat presidency, if you had some Democrat in the White House, the media, every outlet in the country would be screaming these numbers. But because it's a Republican president and conservative fiscal policies that brought this great news to America, you're not going to hear about it because they're not going to tell you. Another factoid, women gained ground. The female to male earnings ratio, which is by itself very flawed, but the whole argument about comparing female income versus male income, we talk about many times in my show, is a flawed statistic, but it's a statistic the left points to all the time. But it improved, the left is fixated on this, and it improved under President Trump. The flawed measure of inequality, which is female to male earnings ratio, went from 81.7 in 2017 to 82.3 in 2019. That's the highest ratio in more than 50 years. So if you're fixated on female versus male, you know, the ratio in pay, leaving aside what they do to earn their pay, if you're fixated on that, President Trump did the best job that had been done, or the policies. Again, it's not Trump personally, it's conservative fiscal policies. Again, this measure, female to male earnings, went from 81.7 in 2017 to 82.3 in 2019. That's the highest ratio in more than 50 years. And the numbers go on and on and on and on and on. I wanted to close out this show by talking about those numbers, but to make this point about my FeminExit mantra, I'm going to start numbering these and talking to you about them, because this is, when you look at Trump's polling numbers, he's doing well. He's doing better and better in all the swing states, and he's putting in place fiscal conservative policies, the kind of policies that actually work to help, again, that do the best in helping women, minorities, including Hispanics, and low-income Americans. Trump's policies made life better for all those groups of people that the left always claims they care about. For all those groups of people the left always claims, this is why women should vote for Democrats, because we Democrats care about minorities and women and people in poverty. We care, vote for us. But their policies never work. They don't make life better. And so if you actually care, do you go with the people who say they care but never help you, or do you go with the policies that work? Whether you do or don't like the president or do or don't like the Republican Party, you should go with, if you're actually voting to help the people you say you care about, you've got to vote with the policies that make life better for them. You know, I thought of this analogy I was going to make, which is, you know, the analogy people talk about how when you are trying to talk to a woman who's in an abusive relationship, and, you know, all the bad things happen, you know, her husband is abusive, repeatedly abusive, and, you know, but she always comes back to, but he says he loves me, and he says he won't do it again, and he says he really cares. And at some point, her friends or social workers or someone saying, stop listening to what he says and pay attention to what he does. It doesn't matter how many times he said, I'm really, really sorry. It'll never happen again. I know I have been abusive 17 times, but this is it. I swear I won't do it again. Her friends, her family, her loved ones, social workers, the police, everyone finally said to women, don't stay with someone who's abusing you just because he says he cares. And that's kind of analogous to women. Don't keep voting for the left because they say they care. It's not enough that they message that they care. It's not enough they come up with all sorts of fancy sounding slogans, that they have tax cuts for the rich and all the things it doesn't matter if they come up with program names that sound really helpful. It doesn't even matter if they come up with programs that actually spend money, such as the Great Society programs. Things the left will tout and say, this is why the poor, minorities, African Americans, women should vote for us, because look at all we do. We spend money to help you. And all the data show, as we've been over on this show many times, that the Great Society, it did hand out money. It did not improve poverty. It made life worse for Black families and other low-income families in this country in the concentrated inner cities because it broke up the family. It dissolved the family unit. The rise in single-parent households paralleled the rise in Great Society government spending. So even when the left says, but we're spending money, we're showing you we care, we're building new programs, we're more and more money out the door. If their programs don't actually heal poverty, if they don't make life better, You're just like the abused woman who says, but this time he says he cares, and listen to these great things. He told me he cares. He said this. He bought me something new. The ideas of the left don't work to heal poverty. They, in fact, do exactly the opposite. The ideas of the left, the big government programs the left creates, the big government policies that create dependency, weakness, massive, a new plantation of low-income Americans dependent on the government. They're not healing America. They're not helping the poor. They are creating a permanent, impoverished class of people who they think they can count on in the next election cycle and the next and the next. It is time for women and all of the other groups that the left tries to target and say, the Democrat Party tries to target and say, we own your vote. We own the women's vote. Nancy Pelosi's used term very close to what I'm saying. You know, we own the women's vote. We own the black vote. We own the Hispanic vote. We own the vote of the poor. They're always arguing they get that vote because they say they care, because they spend money. But when you look at the numbers I just told you about, and these aren't the only ones, there's good ideas like freedom, free markets, limited government, bringing back a strong economy, bringing people out of the dependence on government and into the workforce. These ideas work every time they're tried, and they bless Americans. The FeminExit idea, I'll be talking about more and more and more, is that women need to be inspired to believe in themselves, to believe that they can thrive under freedom, that they do not need to be yet another dependent in the left-wing plantation that the left has created in this country and continues to try to sell. And here in 2020, it's not just a government spending program. It's not just a big society program. The left has now moved into actual radical socialism, Marxism, communist, government-controlled economy and society. This is where the left is trending, and they're using the same arguments that they used to sell the Great Society. The left is arguing, buy into socialism, buy into Marxism, buy into all of this, because after all, we care. We're just trying to make life better. We're just trying to help. Just buy into everything we're saying, and then everything will be fine. You're asked to surrender your soul, surrender your freedom, surrender your opportunity, surrender the promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to the left, who will say, don't worry, we care. And that's why we're taking over every aspect of American culture, society, and economy. It's why we're bringing Marxism to the front door of America. Vote for us. We just want to help. FeminExit has got to get rolling in this country. The exit of women voting for the Democrat Party, voting for the Democrat Party's messaging of remaining weak we've got to stand up and fight it and say no. Women, like you heard in the star of the show today, with Senator Marsha Blackburn's book, talking to her, women need to rise up and to be able to understand the ideas of America's founding, the roots of conservatism, the roots of the ideas of everything we stand for on the conservative side, for rule of law and limited government and federalism, all these ideas. We have to be not just embracing those ideas, we have to be the ones able to explain them to the next generation, able to explain them to the people who kind of blindly vote for the Democrat Party because somebody told them the Democrat Party cares about women. We have a mission and a job to spread that message to the women of America. That's our job, and we can do it. And that, my friends, is America Can We Talk for today. As I do at the close of every show, two things before I get to my Why It Matters to You. Number one, remember my conference that's coming up Saturday, September 26th, called American Women and American Freedom. You can email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com, and I'll send you information. We have tickets left to sell. We have Katie Hopkins and many other stellar speakers coming. We just have got Sidney Powell is coming to receive an award at the end. It's going to be a great, great day in Dallas. Would love to have you here. And the second point, before we get to our Why It Matters, is if you like this show, if you enjoy what you learn, I urge you to subscribe to my newsletter. Go to our website, americacanwetalk.org, and on the homepage, click on subscribe. You get a once-weekly newsletter from me that has links to all the show interviews, everything we talked about over the week. And it also is a great way for you to catch up on this show if you miss a show during the week, and a great way to share the show. And the other thing at the website, if you like what you hear, if you value the voices of freedom in this country, speaking up, voices like mine, please consider supporting this show. This show is expensive to run. I am entirely dependent upon supporters like you. You go to the homepage on americacanwetalk.org, you hit the donate button, you can make a one-time donation, you can make a recurring donation, but understand the show, to do the caliber show we do, to have everything we do to make this, to deliver it to you at no charge on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and other places. It is costly to do this, and I would so appreciate if you would participate in helping to support this show. Again, go to americacanwetalk.org, hit the donate button, help support this show, entirely supported by listeners. Now we'll turn and talk about why the stories we talked about today matter to you. So we started out our show today on Trump's foreign policy wins versus what the media focuses on. So we have Israel, UAE, and Israel, Bahrain, and Serbia and Kosovo. Historic, consequential, and good. These are what Americans should want a president to accomplish. Yet the American media just cannot objectively handle good news for America under Trump. The Atlantic puts out a lie about Trump's remarks about soldiers. Everybody, it's now over 20 people have said this story is a complete lie, made it up. But this is the Atlantic, just a left-wing rag. New York Times, weird nitpicking over inconsistency with China. I mean, the most ridiculous, it doesn't even matter to explain. When you look at what President Trump has done in defending America against what was happening with China, and New York Times is trying to nitpick a fight. Washington Post, Woodward distortion of Trump on COVID, another just ridiculous, distracting attack on the president. This was one, I'm going to tell you very quick, this is one where Woodward tried to write in this Washington Post summary of, he sat down for an interview with Trump, that Trump had misled America, that somehow Trump had said one thing to insiders about the COVID being serious, and yet had turned to the American people and said something different, that sounded like he was lying or misleading. This is the Washington Post trying to distort something which was completely false, and another lie. Even Dr. Fauci stepped forward and very forcefully refuted what Woodward was writing about Donald Trump. Just said there's no way. He's never seen any inconsistency between what President Trump says to the public and what he says in private and what Fauci's told him to say. Literally, this is a complete concoction by Woodward, the Washington Post. And CNN spent time with this beautiful peace accord celebration at the White House, complaining because they didn't see people in attendance at the historic signing of peace deals because they weren't socially distancing. I mean, seriously, the greatness of what Trump is doing, the pettiness of America's media on display. Americans recognize their mainstream media has collapsed, no integrity or credibility. And this great Issues and Insights editorial, where you can read it on our website, americacanwetalk.org. On the homepage, you can find this editorial, all about the data from the annual U.S. Census Report of 2019. Median household income reaches all-time high, up 6.8%, largest increase since 1967. Lower income families gained the most. Bottom 20% saw income up 10%. Top 5% saw percent of total income drop. Women gained ground. Female to male earnings ratio rose for women. Minorities gained more than whites. Whites gained 6.8%, blacks 10%, Hispanics 7%, Asians 15%. Poverty plunged, lowest poverty rate since 1959. Medicaid enrollment dropped. Employer coverage climbed. 5 million people added since Trump took office through 2019. Massively good news for America, but the mainstream media ignores it because Trump derangement syndrome. Final story for today, we talked about why FeminExit, and I'm going to tell you, people, we're going to talk about this because I really hope, I know if you listen to my show, you probably already vote conservatively. I want you to feel like you're part of the army that encourages other women to vote conservatively. Poor women, minorities are better off under Trump. Just like the battered spouse syndrome of political allegiance must finally be overcome, the data is clear and irrefutable. The poor do worse under Democrats. They've done better under Trump. Women do worse under Democrats. They've done better under Trump. Minorities do worse under Democrats. They've done better under Trump. Evidence abounds. The light is coming on for all Americans. A Trump landslide beyond the Democrats' ability to cheat is building. And that, my very fine friends, is America Can We Talk for today. Thank you so much for tuning in every Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Central Time, to America Can We Talk, where I always talk truth about America because America matters. And I'll talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.